slightly, seems like we're on the level side, not terribly off. Welcome all. We're going to start here in a moment. See if I can give myself a frame. I wonder if I should go a little bit lower. I think it'd be a little bit closer because it's windy. And so I'm going to try that and see how we do there. I'm going to find a spot. Yeah, that's not going to be too bad. Mark that with my wisely chosen cold water. And hopefully very soon I'll be able to put some gloves on. I'm already in my horse stance. I probably am not bundled up enough. It says the wind chill is 17, but it's just under 30 degrees now, maybe 27 here. And I don't quite know what the winds are, but I know that they've been blowing things over and blowing me around and blowing the heat out of my system. It looks like they're 15 or so, and I am probably about 15 feet away from the camera, trying to get my voice up so that you can hear me, particularly when the winds go. I'm going to try and call up the live stream here so I can communicate with you. Hi Deirdre, I'm going to start in a moment. I'm already in my horse stance. I don't have very level ground here, but it's not terribly sloping either. It's just okay. Gonna update my thing, and we'll update the notes. The plan is to introduce a new stance today, so I'll probably do a little bit of warm-up and then we'll go. I just want to share this with a couple groups lest I forget, and then I get my gloves on and focus on a little bit of practice. I got another thing to film before the sun goes down. I don't know how much time I'm going to have for all of it. It is going to be what it is, I guess. Share this with a few people here. Okay, I've got it shared a little bit now, so I am going to put gloves on and get ourselves moving. Woo! I was facing this way earlier for filming something, and my hoodie was getting blown off. That reminds me, I probably should change hats. Maybe I'll do that real fast while we start. So find a nice level spot, give yourself a little bit of room to move, not much, and we'll start in a moment. Woo, that's better. Got myself a fuzzy hat. That should help the hoodie stay on as well. Okay. So I'm gonna start I'm going to go into a low horse, relatively low horse for what we've been doing. Tracking the knees. You get a view of my studio here, our studio behind me today. I think I'm usually filming the other direction. I'm kind of facing kind of northwest here today. And when you get a little bit tired, I'm going to just come out part way. So I just came up a little bit, still in the stance, trying to raise my voice so that you can hear me fine as the weather picks up. It takes me a bit more effort to increase the sound in post-production, but if I had feedback that it was worth it, I might do it every time. This might be one of those times, but I can only bump it up like 20%. I don't know if I can much tell the difference, so I haven't done it every time. And now I'm going to come up to a very shallow, so I've just kind of barely sat in the horse stance. So I kind of went low, middle, and high, and then I'll come all the way out in the, when I'm done. And then I'll just come out, kind of straighten the legs, stretch out, shake them out if you need, reset your feet, have a sip of your tea. Okay, I'm going to do that again. And this time, I'm going to do it backwards. So I'm going to go in to a tiny little horse stance, just barely sat in. Give me a good chance to think about the principles, the corrections, the things I'm working on. I have a little bit of blanket kind of bundling around the iPad today, so it may help with some of the wind noise in the microphones, but I don't really know. And then I'm getting a little bit tired or a little bit ready to change, so I'm going to go down into medium. And I'm just suggesting a couple levels. You could do this with 2 levels or 6 levels or 10 levels. It doesn't really matter. I just figured 3, small, medium, large, is kind of accessible. Had a great shingy session today and didn't record at all. Went through the whole thing. Nothing got recorded. Let's see if we have any better luck with this one. And I'm getting a little bit tired of that, and I'm going to go down to the deepest. And again, it's just the deepest that I'm doing today, or you're doing today. No challenge, no ego, no competitiveness, just a bit further. So as I get tired, I actually go further into it, which is a physical challenge, but it might be kind of a psychological challenge or emotional challenge. Can I do more of the thing I'm ready to do less of? Of course, I want to do it safely and attentively. So I'm not measuring against a clock or a partner or my teacher. I don't want to invite my ego into it. And so we'll sit there. I have kind of a fun view here of the camera is set up on the car. I have the car parked in a weird space, and that's why I'm facing this different direction. I'll try and post it to you later. Hey Matthew, hey Bill, hey Kaylee, glad you're here. Bill, throw a steak on the grill. I need some warm, filling food when I'm done with this. And now I'm ready to come out, so I'll come all the way out. Good. So I'm going to do another version of the one I just did, and that is to say I'm going to go shallow, moderate, and full. And then when I come out, I'll go back to moderate, and then I'll come back to shallow, and then out. So same idea, but I'm slow on my exit. So shallow. Really helpful when you do something like this to not have an extrinsic measure like your classmate or the poster on your wall or the visual in your mind of your teacher or the clock, as I said. But it's also important to say, well, I know what my plan is to go shallow, moderate, deep, And then when I come out, go from deep to moderate, moderate to shallow. That's my plan. But my principles are pay attention, listen to the body. And if I go, let's say, shallow, moderate, deep, and then moderate, and I just need to come out, not want to come out, just need to come out, skip shallow, come all the way out, right? So I'm not going to force myself to do the whole thing and risk a violation of my principles. I don't want to risk my health. And if I had that particular experience where I get to moderate and I can't go to shallow because I'm done, I can reassess the whole thing. Maybe I just do 2 levels, right? Maybe I go all the way in and I work on coming out instead of ratcheting my way down. So I've come down to moderate now. I don't think I said that, but here we are. We could have some unplanned camera work today when the wind knocks the camera around. We'll see what happens. And in that kind of reassessment, I might also decide, rather than just 2 levels or come all the way in initially, I might just do different duration, right? Maybe I'd stay for a long time at the bottom and stay for half that period of time at the ratchet points meeting the full. So now I'm down to full for me today. This is my full today. Yours might be more deep, less deep, but it's your fullest for now. And remember, there's just a warm-up, right? And it's still our true beginner's guide. So our full is not going to be with our thighs parallel like so. I'm just down into my full. I don't know that you can see too much in terms of the studio. You might be able to see the rose quartz, which I'm going to guess is just about underneath my hand here at the entrance to the studio. That was a gift from me from students in Sedona, Arizona when I was teaching there. You might be able to see the Taoist parking sign on the sunlit side of the studio. The color of the studio is Benjamin Moore Yin Yang, which is a fun story, but and now I'm just going to come back out to moderate. I might have, if I was paying attention, I might have, sat in each of these for 10 breaths or 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever and come back up. I'm just lucky to still be alive in this frozen weather. But the sun's pretty low and the cast of light on the trees is quite beautiful. And now I have a warmer hat. So I'm going to try this in the wider stance. Sink, track, shift, track, center, track, center, track, sink, just reminding you to be sunken, center, and then track, center, tracking knee femur, center, shifting, tracking knee femur, center, knee femur. And you can maybe check in with yourself doing this. Are you having an up and a down, or are you having a lean? And I'd like to be level with the head, no leaning with the posture. Tune into that zhongding in the middle, shift, tune into the knee femur tracking. Good. We hadn't done this one before in terms of just over, center, over, center, over, and maybe do like a count of 24, maybe a count of 10 or 12, something like that. Trying to keep yourself the same level. I'll do another version of that and then maybe we'll get into our new stance. So I have 3 positions, center, right, and left. So I can come down, that's just my center of course, and then pick a side to start on. I'm going to start on my right, but it doesn't matter. And then center, and then left. So we'll do that again, but I'm not going to go down very far like we did in that horse stance warm-up. Down just a little bit, over, center, over, center, down a tiny bit more, over, center, over, center, down a tiny bit more, over, center, over, center, a little bit more, 1, 2, 3, center, a little more commit, 1, 2, 3. I probably should have widened my feet before this. I can't go too much lower. Down, over, 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 here. And I'm making this a little fast. We can certainly stay settled here, shift. But I'm really kind of sloshing side to side, I guess. And I'm out of depth here at this point. I didn't step wide enough. And then come on out of it. So I'm really just kind of slowly working my way down, and then you might stay at the bottom, and you might slowly work your way up. You might slowly work your way down, center, and then just come up the way I just did. And of course you might just go down, slowly work your way up, right? Just like we did on the horse stance exercise. So same idea. Let's try it once more. Good idea to make sure you have good purchase with your feet on the surface you're on, and that surface is level and supportive and non-slip. I do not have a particularly level one, but it's not way off, and I think we're going to be doing okay. If you have a question, please type it in. If you can think of somebody to share it with, please share it. If you can think about how to, I think you press the 3 dots in the upper right, and then you can say ask to be notified when I go live. You can do that. And of course you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow along, or Patreon, follow along. There's hundreds of videos up on Patreon covering a range of Daoyin, Tuina, Qigong, Neigong, Neidan, Gong Fu, Aikido, philosophy, introductory, stances, breathing, warm-ups, stretches, meditation, contemplation, weapons, readings, poetry, etc. I'm gonna just work my way back up this time, slowly. So initially on the horse stance I just did 3 because it's kind of easy to follow, easy to remember. And here I'm doing, I don't know, 10 or 12. I'm talking, I'm not paying close attention. But I'm kind of slowly ratcheting 10 or 12 to get all the way down and then all the way up. Each time tracking the knee. If you're just tuning in and watching this from a couch, it probably doesn't look like it's doing too much. And then chimney your way out. Definitely recommend a big, long gulp of ice water. I didn't stop to make a cup of tea today because the light was fading. I wanted to get out here and get doing this. So we're gonna do a stance today. So this stance is Jishingbu, and I'm just checking in to see who else has joined in. Bob and Gwen and John, great to see you all. Hopefully you guys are practicing. So this is a stance you'll see in a number of different Kung Fu styles. Very few Kung Fu styles make this a real feature of their system, so it's sort of a basic stance for them. But even in Tai Chi Chuan, you'll see this quite a bit, quite regularly, but maybe just kind of the once. And some Kung Fu systems I have not seen it in. So this is what we might call an empty stance, like we did with the cat stance. So the weight will be almost entirely on one leg, but it's not quite a single-legged stance like when we did metal chicken. And So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shift my weight, open one leg. Good. So I've shifted my weight from me to my right leg, and I'm going to open my left hip. So when I shift to the right leg, that means the right leg is bent. That also means that right knee won't be moving. So let's try again. So I can sink in a little bit if I started straight, sink in a tiny bit. So in profile, that might just be that little bit. Sinking a little bit, shift to one side without leaning. And then open this hip, which will open the leg and therefore the foot. In other words, I don't reach my toes and I don't swing my knee. I open the hip, that's where my mind is. And I'm just gonna open that hip about 45 degrees or so. Right, maybe 30. 45 is probably gonna buy you a little bit more stability here. So we'll start again. A little bend, a little shift, commitment of the knee and the femur, commitment to the hip as the catalyst. Good. Now I'm going to track the knee and shift onto this leg. Good. So we'll try that again. Sink, shift, open the hip, and shift. So I'll do that again. Sink, shift, open, and shift. This time when I shift, I'm going to try and direct my torso in the direction of that femur tracking on the open leg. So sink if you haven't already sunk. Shift to, for me, it's the far leg, the outside leg, my right leg. Open the hip. And as I shift to this, I'm going to try and direct my belly button in that direction a bit as well. You might not be flexible enough to get your whole belly button where your toes are pointed, but thereabouts is going to be nice for us. I'll do that again facing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can break up 4 into a couple parts if I so desired. 1, right, so 1, 2, 3. And I could turn before I shift. So 4 and then shift 5 if I wanted. I could also shift and then turn, which is how I described it, I think. It's all fine. It could be together, separate. The point is not to leave it out if you can. 1, so I'm down. 2, I'm over. 3, I'm swung open. Let's say 4, I face. 5, I shift and track the knee. So what I'm going to do is bring this foot forward towards the camera. So my two legs are kind of 45 degrees offset. So in this case, my left foot is west, my right foot is northwest, thereabouts. Good. I'm going to do it again to the other side so that water bottle's not in the way. Shift, sink, shift, swing, turn the trunk if you want. I could have turned the trunk when I swung. I could have done it all together. That'd be fine. That's just a little harder to keep this knee in place. And then step. So there's my step. And that's the stance. We're going to talk about it some more and do it a bunch. But there we go. So I'll do this in profile now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can do it this way, here, here, shift onto it, and then step the foot I've left behind. And I certainly could just open to that foot doing it. Or I can open to this foot. Either one is going to be fine, whichever way you like. So to keep myself facing camera, I'm going to open one leg, and that leg that opens is going to bear my weight, and then I'm going to advance. And that's my stance. you may notice that there's, as the camera sees it, there's, of course I'm not perfectly square with the camera, but I'm pretty well in a line here from my lead toe to my lead heel to my rear heel. I'm not here and I'm not over here. I'm pretty well like this. So there's some variations that we can play with on this, but essentially I don't want this wide stance, right? Where I'm facing, I want there to be essentially nothing between my thighs and calves. Like, so that view you see, you know, I guess the grass between my thighs and calves and here. If I had been facing more in this direction, it'd be the same thing. I wouldn't be here, here. And if I'm open here, it's the same thing facing you or facing here. I don't want to have a sense of this facing with the feet. I want more like this. And so the stance would look that way. So we'll try it again, and then I'll check in on comments. 1, 2. Not done teaching it, there's going to be more to say, but just to get us into it and make sure that we've understood it. I don't see more comments, so I knew that would be the case. And again, really want to do some mantis movements in this. This really feels like a, you know, a type of kung fu to me. But the practice here for us and this true beginners is just have the stance and not have that stance driven by ego. Letting you perhaps see the other side. Not sure if that water bottle's in the way here. So one kind of important thing to note that when we're doing 7-star stance is that the foundation knee is bent, so we know that. That's where my weight is. The foundation leg has a bent knee. And like when we were doing cat stance, like so, this leg is almost entirely unenergized, right? It's not taut. It's very, very relaxed. It's lightly engaged. So maybe we wouldn't say it's not energized. It's just energized with this yin flavor, this yin feeling. And so it's soft. It's not tiring out, right? And it's just barely touching the ground in terms of weight, right? So it's touching the ground, but not with the full sole of the foot, and I'm certainly not pressing down. So with the 7-star, this is called the 7-star stance. It's one way it's just designed to help you understand the relationship between the ankles and the wrists, the knees and the elbows, the shoulders and the hips, among other things, including your santashi, your central reservoirs of attention, consciousness, and energy, I guess. So in this particular stance, 7-star stance, there's a bit of an active feeling in that leg. So cat stance is relatively inactive. 7-star stance, I certainly have an active leg here, bent, holding my weight, possibly for a long time as I train. But the idea is to point those toes up as opposed to do something kind of resting here. So I'm really working to kind of drive the heel and, and point the toes up, right? If I was to sink into this and be in a much lower stance as we go down, I might get that a little bit more vertical as opposed to here, given whatever your ankle flexibility is. See, this time you know when a car goes by instead of just wonder what happened to the audio. So the focus here is to drive the heel and point the toes up. And we point the toes up not by moving the toes away from the plane of the foot, but by rotating at the ankle. So if my hand is my foot here, So here's my ankle, right? And so that goes back to that reference, that luha that we were talking about. And this is my foot, and these are my toes. Of course, fingers are toes. And I'm looking for kind of that position or something like this, depending on your flexibility. Of course, your flexibility would have to be more because your shin would be like here. And here's your knee instead of my knee, which is my elbow, being here. So this kind of idea, but in order to get the toes to point up, we're not activating the toes. See how I bent my toes back? So I'm not reaching with my toes by using the joints of the toes. I'm reaching with the toes by driving the heel and activating the whole foot as a unit. This way, not this way. That's gonna get cold. Okay, so I'll just start it again. Hi Izzy, good to have you join us. I just saw you come on. So shift, open, and 7-star. So sunken down, knee tracking, tailbone dropping towards the Achilles, energy driving the heel, foot in this dorsal flexion, thinking toes towards the sky, and that's our 7-star stance. 7-star stance is not often a posture that you'll see somebody hanging out in. You'll see it used as more of a transitional stance, unless somebody's competing. Then they kind of belabor it and they, smile and there's a glint in their eye. Like, take a picture now, take a picture now. And so there's this little hesitation when people take the stance in competition. But often it's quite transitional, right? Where I might have hooked here, well, maybe we'll talk about that, but it's often used to strike the foot or the lower regions of somebody, ankle, malleolus, Achilles, foot, instep, toe, that sort of thing. And perhaps check the ankle or shin, perhaps hook with the instep side, top of your feet side, the dorsal side of the feet, and use to hook the side of the foot, the rear of the foot. It certainly could be used to, if you're behind the person, hook the front of the foot as well. But very often you'll see this kind of as a hook, right? And then we transition into a gongbu stance or a bow stance or forward stance or something like that, where I challenge the foot, and then here, as I transition my stance here, having hooked them, now I'm challenging another facet of their lower leg. Right, oops, I almost did the hands. So this is our Qixing, Xing Xing, 7-star stance. And the 7-star stance can be done much like we see other empty stances, quite closed, let's say kind of moderately open, moderately closed, and a bit more somewhat open, right? So the angle between my feet is fairly narrow, a bit moderate, or a bit more open. Or we could say that another way, that if I keep my forward leg facing camera, my left leg might be 90 degrees, might be 60, might be 45, and as little as 30. So how open I am on my rear foot. Generally somewhere in the middle, so 45, 60 is going to be where you're going to find your most stability for a beginner. 90 can be stable. It can present its own stability challenges, but it also will almost definitely present flexibility challenges. And 30 won't present flexibility challenges, but definitely stability challenges. So coming into the 30, 45, 60 range is going to be what I'd recommend for a beginner. And again, a beginner could be somebody suffering from illness, recovering from illness, suffering an injury, recovering from injury, arthritic, obese, sedentary, feeling old, feeling fat, what have you, and ideally a true beginner is somebody who is a veteran and not afraid to work on the basics with a renewed sense of commitment, openness, understanding, and sincerity. In other words, I do these series for everybody, but taking this height stance, this amount of flexibility, this duration, and combining that with calling it true beginners, I am hopeful, I guess, that actual novices will get up off the couch and do this with me. If you know one, share this or share the whole playlist of these. Good. So we'll talk a little bit about function so you can visualize this, which we haven't talked about too much with the other stances. But this is, I think, our 7th stance. So I guess you guys can see the bottom of that, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So the stance might be done like so, where I'm checking that movement, right? So that might be somebody's shin or ankle, for example. The stance might be done, I use the water bottle here, as a strike like so. It might be done like as a trap, so you might imagine that water bottle's a foot, and I'm sort of resting my arch on the instep or so. So strike, cover, and check as a couple examples. You might also see it this way. I guess you can't see that too well. You might also see it this way, where I'm checking this person's foot. You can see that they're going to have trouble shifting forward, and they're going to have trouble stepping back or stepping to this side. They kind of need to step over towards the studio, which might open their back to me, close their center line to me, take away their other tools, right? And of course, that could have been from the outside or the inside, depending on where this, this isn't a person, so depending on where they're facing, I might be on their side, I might be on their rear, and I might be facing them or slightly offline facing them, like the way that we might see. But here, you might imagine here where I'm checking somebody, knee to knee, for example, and then when I shift stance, that becomes quite a challenge for them, particularly if I'm shifting stances like something like this. You can see that's what's happened to their lower limb. Okay. So I think what I'd like to do is just do it a little bit, and I'll check on you all. Hey, Andre. How are you, sir? How's Nutley, man? I missed the diner. Good, so here's our 7 start stance. I've been turning a whole bunch, hoping that you can see me. This one is going to benefit from a bunch of the stretches that you might have available to you for the calf, the hamstring, the ankles. I didn't review them today, limited time, it's really cold, and I've already taught a bunch. I'm sure if we come back to this as a practice, I'll do some specific stretches or strengthening for the elements that might be challenged in this stance, the elements of the being. But we might guess here, ankle, calf are right up there, and hamstrings, for example. So you've done a few where we're stretching, and you can certainly work on these. I'll do this in profile. I've just transitioned into a strength and stretching exercise we would do for this, which is just to pulse down and up. And as I go down, working on the strength of the foundation leg and the stretch on the calf or Achilles of the empty side. So I get strength, stretch, release, strength, stretch, release. It's funny, I think I was just talking about that, and then as soon as I shifted into it and thought I'm not going to say anything else, I just started doing it. And since I'm on camera, I figured I'd explain what I'm doing. So I remember practicing them at this pace, right? So and keeping that toe heading up, and the idea was to do 100, and I think almost nobody ever could. You got up to 40, 50, 50, 60, and people were dropping out. Like flies, which is good for mantis. I think I'm going to finish up so I can teach my next session. Last chance to ask or share or comment. So if you know a group we should share this to, please share it, or person. And also, if you have a stance you'd like me to teach that I haven't taught, please type it in. It'd be fun to do that. I think I'm up to about 20 here. I'm guessing maybe 2 more. So that's pretty nice. So let's see where we are. Hi, Kalina. Hello. Hey, it's Collins there too. I see your note, Izzy. Thank you. All right. Well, I don't see questions, so I'm gonna tape my Shingy session now and log into my YouTube, and you can follow all of these. I think if you search SHH Dragon, you'll find me. I'll aim to do one tomorrow.